Today I wanted to mention and talk about a little bit objective morality. Oh, for a very, very excellent YouTube atheist, PW Swivel, I did a video with him around, provided the audio. He totally, did the video excellently about my stance on objective morality, which is that it simply doesn't exist. I wanted to talk about that again because as I've watched debates, sometimes Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins, and another interesting guy I really like to watch, Sam Harris. They keep talking about objective morality, and with I think the exception of Dawkins, who I think generally doesn't discuss the issue because maybe he holds a similar view to mine. Usually Hitchens and sometimes Harris will concede the existence of objective morality. And it's not hard to do because even if quote unquote morality is objective, God is not necessary to explain it. Now, I think where people keep going to with objective morality is there are certain acts that are pretty universally reprehensible that nobody thinks is good, that nobody can see the use in or anything good about them. Because sometimes people say that good is the absence of evil or vice versa. Evil is the absence of good. And of course, there's nothing more, good is not more absent anywhere than, cases of rape, child exploitation, child molestation, cold-blooded murder, murder in the first degree. These are things that everybody agrees are bad, and there's very, very few people who can see the use in these things. But, and here's a big but, there are cultures that allow prearranged marriage of, teen and especially preteen girls that, are totally okay with marriage against the will of a child. The child will actually elope with this person and be forced to have sex with them well before, ages 9, 10, 11, 12, ages that I don't think is moral to have sex with a child. I've met a lot of Christians and other extremely religious people of religions that abhor murder that are very, very pro-death penalty, who have vengeful personalities. Generally, whenever I've debated a person or argued with a person informally about the death penalty, what comes up is, they deserve it. We shall not suffer them to live. But that flies in the face of a direct and seemingly inarguable commandment, thou shalt not kill. Even though that's regularly contradicted by both God and all of his chosen people, depending on which ones you're talking about. So I look at this objective morality in murder and genocide. Are regularly used to say, well, objective morals exist because here's an objectively immoral thing. No. Okay, look. The reason why I'm a moral relativist is because it is relative. If we look at nature, empirical nature, the way things are, people say that nature is immoral because animals kill each other, monkeys will rape each other and fucking, kill members of their tribe or especially other tribes and shit, and that nature is generally seen as a violent or at least very unforgiving place. And what's more moral than forgiveness and goodness and all that fun stuff. But look, nature is immoral because it has to be, because there are such things as carnivores and territorial creatures. And when you look at these animals, what do they consider about morality? They eat, they protect their territory, they have to show dominance or be killed or ostracized. And to them, morals don't exist. Not only do they not consider what is evil, they don't consider what is good. For them, they follow their instincts. Now, Sam Harris has done this really interesting talk I saw on YouTube. I gotta, one of these days I'm gonna get around to knowing how to use this goddamn site and, provide links and stuff and sources. But, he talked about how free will is an illusion and that we too, as people, are guided by instinct. And you know what? I think that's true. When you look at the brain, we seek what triggers, endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and bad things trigger cortisol, stress hormones, bad feelings. You know, why do people want to be rich? Same reason an animal wants to own a territory and eat everything that's prey in it. You know, we are not so different than the animals around us. In fact, we are not different than the animals around us, except for our capacity to consider ourselves and to affect our environment. And that, like morals, is relative. Ants make very structured hierarchical societies. But we don't think of anything of stepping on them. We don't think they think. I don't even think these things have eyes. Well, fuck, God, don't quote me on that. I'm so bad about not knowing that, but I know that they're scent-driven creatures for the most part. So you ask yourself, what is evidence of objective morality other than a massive, overwhelming consensus of a majority? And then we look at an act of like cold-blooded murder and we can't justify it to ourselves. But that doesn't mean that it's objectively wrong. People fight wars, people execute criminals, people take revenge and enjoy revenge in art. Why is that? Because we are driven by our instincts, by our desire to succeed, to survive, and to propagate, to expand our power, our wealth, our survivability. There's nothing about what human beings do that isn't analogous to things that animals do. These creatures that are supposedly, just stuff put here by God to just be stuff. Us chosen people surely must have an objective morality come from God. And you don't need to quote atrocity in the Bible or contradictions in the will of God to argue that objective morality is bullshit, because it just is. And you really distill the motivations of people when you look at the brain and why the chemicals, the endorphins in our brain, do things. You realize that we are nothing more than a more complicated, complex, and grander scale of animal motivation. There is no objective morality. That doesn't mean that having moral standards that we strictly adhere to is not a good thing. This is how society organizes. But, you look at another social animal, lions. Sure, they do things we consider horrible, but ultimately they don't all kill each other. And why is that? And a Christian will say, if God didn't tell me to be good, I wouldn't be. Why? Why? I'm sorry, but atheists are very underrepresented in the capital criminal category. There's no evidence to support that we have no morality. And then there's this absurd, absolutely preposterous idea that we can't even speak on moral issues because God has a monopoly on morals. Please. Fuck. Though, how can you admire the kindness of animals like dogs? Dogs that show evidence of emotional values. Animals can show generosity, or at least evidence of generosity. But is even generosity some sort of transcendent principle? No. You know why I do nice things to people? Because it makes me feel good. And why do we consider that inherently moral? Because when I do charity, I'm helping somebody and I feel good about it. So what about that is anything more than just something you couldn't argue is evil? And what about things like murder is anything more than you can't argue it's good? But that's a subjective standard, okay? If you really think killing and murder is wrong, then if you support the death penalty, if you fucking live in Texas, I'm sorry, you have no right to speak on morals. I live, sometimes I bring up Texas, and there were some really nice people in there, but they were some old school, older people. I saw a lot of arrogance, selfishness, pride in some of these Christians down there. And another reason why I'm a moral relativist is because I refuse to believe that even the staunchest creationist people that I believe that are a serious threat to the fabric of the American society as a whole, education, legislation, law, freedom, I believe that the creationist legislative agenda is evil and the enemy of the principles of the United States Constitution. We're a Christian nation. Then why was Thomas Jefferson a vehement anti-Christian? Why was Benjamin Franklin an atheist? Most of these people were deists. They believed that there was something transcendent about their duty and transcendent about the world around them and transcendent about the American ideal. So they ascribed that to some sort of metaphysical, benign, benevolent force. They didn't ascribe it to the Christian God. Nope. Guess where the only place where the words God occurs in the Declaration of Independence in the Constitution? In the Declaration of Independence, all people, God created all men equal, or all men were created equal. That's arguably a reference. And in the Constitution, it's specifically, the Constitution shall make no law considering God. Again, I really need to actually get actual freaking quotes. I'm rather pathetic at this point. Neophyte. But okay, let's wrap this up. Objective morals don't exist. Morality itself is a fully relative term that is purely descriptive to describe concrete things. Morality is a concept. The world is material. Morality is immaterial. It's a thought. It's a description. It's a way of understanding things. It doesn't exist in a concrete standard. There's no law. There is no moral law. Not in the same way that there's laws like gravitational attraction. There's just not. So in closing, I just really wanted to say something more about this because I don't like conceding to the idea of objective morality for the express purpose of saying God is not objectively moral. Objective morality doesn't exist. And you don't even need to acknowledge objective morality to be a good person. And just because I'm a moral relativist doesn't mean I reject descriptive terms like good or moral or even righteous. I believe in principles of being righteous. And I believe that these are subjective and subject to context. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. But some sort of standard, law, means of judging. No, everything's subject to the situation in which it occurs in real life. There's no real morality. Only what we can look at, observe, and consequently judge as moral or immoral. Thank you for your time. Peace out.